And we are live for the latest edition of Nick Valencia Live. Hello, everybody, wherever you may be joining us from. I'm Nick Valencia, the host of Nick Valencia Live, founder of this platform here. And we want to get into it right away. We've got a lot of news that we're covering, a lot of our agenda, and some really exciting guests for you here in the show ahead. But we start with some really fun news. If you guys were watching us on Tuesday, you know that we focused a lot on the sort of boom that artificial intelligence is experiencing right now. AI got really good really fast. You see Sora, they launched their free app September 30th, and we've seen social media flooded with these kinds of videos that look really too good to be true. It's because they are. And we got a lot of lessons from Jeremy Carrasco. He is Show Tools AI, an expert in AI, one of the leading experts, and we were able to educate and empower a lot of you. I got a lot out of it, and it appears as though you guys got out a lot of it as well, because earlier this morning, we took a call from one of the professors at the Rennes School of Business in Rennes, France. And early next year, we're really excited to announce that we'll be going to, we don't know if we're going there, but we're going to be lecturing at the Rennes School of Business about artificial intelligence and our experiences with it. What we're doing as leaders in this new media space to make sure that the videos that we're putting out there, the images that we're highlighting, especially of the federal immigration forces and the brutality, the just unlawful acts at the hands of these agents that we're seeing on the streets, we want to make sure that these are accurate videos. My executive producer, Eric Sandoval, and I, we really pour over these videos, and we use the tools that we learn from people like Jeremy Carrasco to make sure that we're not getting duped and putting out something that is false. The problem with this isn't just that there's so many AI videos that you might believe what's fake. The problem is you may not start believing what is real. And we're already seeing that happening. In fact, it was a couple of weeks ago, I talked to Jeremy about this, that I saw Stephen Miller, White House advisor, senior advisor to the president, and he had sort of a hiccup on air. And initially, the clip that I saw play, I thought it was AI. It wasn't. He had a weird stumble on air, but that's sort of what is happening now. We're seeing so many clips like that even, when we see a little bit of lip flap, we may think it's AI. It's not. The exciting thing, though, is that we have the tools to help navigate this field filled with landmines, where it appears as though these tech companies are rewarding and incentivizing people to flood the zone with this artificial intelligence type content. And people are going to great lengths to try to cover up the watermarks of Sora, or to try to dupe people into thinking that these things are real. The real videos are dramatic and tragic enough. I don't think that somebody has to create these videos. But we have an article, an op-ed, or shouldn't say an op-ed. We have another one of those, but we have a report done by our executive producer, Eric Sandoval, highlighting this, Disbelieving What You See, a lesson in media literacy. If you haven't read that, it's on our Substack, on our website, Nick Valencia Live, or nickvalencianews.com. You can go check it out there. Moving on, though, it has been an incredible amount of action that we have seen in Charlotte. The Greg Bovino show. He is the Border Patrol commander who we've seen in cities like Los Angeles, we've seen in Chicago, and now he's made his way to Charlotte. And if you've been paying attention to our reporting this week, you've seen a lot of videos that we've posted, including a high-speed chase in the middle of a busy intersection. We're also talking to individuals there on the ground, residents who have taken a page out of the activists in Los Angeles and Chicago and other places, and are forming community defense organizations. We've talked a lot about community defense groups on this show, places in Los Angeles that have groups like Unión del Barrio, places like West Valley City in Utah that have the West Valley chapter of the Brown Berets. These groups that are really taking it upon themselves to help feed the community, go out and buy groceries for individuals who are afraid to go out, who are helping people, when it comes to childcare or, walking their schools. We've seen that in Chicago, images of people walking next to kids with backpacks to try to protect them, form a phalanx line between them and any potential federal immigration agents they may be coming their way. Really dramatic stuff. And we know that everywhere that Greg Bovino is, the Greg Bovino show follows. But it's not just in these cities where he is that action is happening. We saw a massive raid over the weekend in the San Antonio area, the District of Texas Representative, Democrat Joaquin Castro. And it was very similar to what we saw in Chicago. You remember that raid in Chicago in the middle of the night, 2, 3 in the morning, where federal agents descended and rappelled from a Black Hawk helicopter. They went into an apartment complex where they claimed that they had evidence of illicit activity. They claim that that apartment complex was rife with members of the violent gang Tren de Aragua. Still, no one has been charged more than a month later since that raid. Nothing. ProPublica's reporting said they caught up with two of those violent offenders who said they have nothing to do with Tren de Aragua and that they are being used sort of as scapegoats. There's plenty of other theories online out there. A similar thing happened, though, in Texas. And our next guest is going to talk about that. We pre-recorded an interview with Texas Democratic Representative Joaquin Castro. He talked about a lot, including this raid that happened in his district over the weekend. And also, he had a message to Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is on a mea culpa tour asking for forgiveness for participating in toxic politics. Here's our interview here, 25-minute interview with Texas Representative Joaquin Castro. And we are so grateful to be joined by a just dynamic politician, somebody who has been very active in the middle of immigration policy and has been a stand-up defender of undocumented immigrants in this country. Somebody who you may be familiar with, Representative Joaquin Castro, joins us from Washington, D.C. Joaquin Castro, Representative Congressman, come on in the building here. Come on in and join us. We're so excited to see you.
Good to be with you, Nick.
Hey, let's just get right into it because I know timing is limited with you. And we're so grateful for you to spend your time with us. You have been active right now because there was a raid in your district, very reminiscent to what we saw the feds target this alleged Tren de Aragua apartment complex in Chicago. Tell us about what you know about the raid that happened in your district.
Well, apparently over this past weekend, about 2 or 3 in the morning on Sunday morning, there was a huge ICE raid at this food court where you have a bunch of food trucks that are lined up. And in San Antonio, it was on the north side. And they say they arrested now 140. Originally, it was 150. Now we're hearing 140 people. But we don't have much information about it. And again, there was a statement put out about these people being associated with the Venezuelan gang, Tren de Aragua. Now, the reason that I'm skeptical is, well, first of all, ICE has been abusing the rights of a lot of people, undocumented immigrants, legal residents, U.S. citizens, but they've put out a lot of false information that we later find out was a complete ruse. So in Chicago, for example, that building where they came in and they basically ran a military operation with Black Hawk helicopters, they ended up charging no one, literally no one was associated with the Venezuelan gang. In fact, in Chicago, only 2.5% of the people that they arrested even had a criminal record. And this is after Donald Trump said he was going to go after criminals. He's in fact going after undocumented immigrants who are working hard here, who are contributing, and even U.S. citizens.
We know that you are working actively on legislation to try to protect those U.S. citizens who have been caught up in this aggressive immigration law enforcement. Was there a specific incident that happened that got you interested in trying to write this legislation? Is there something that you saw specifically that made you, cringe?
Well, I mean, I've been really wary for years. If you think about going back to Prop 187 in California, SB 1070 in Arizona, SB 4 in Texas, that these kinds of pieces of legislation would lead to racial profiling of Latinos. And now with ICE under Donald Trump, that's exactly what's happening. And you've got Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, and other governors who are actively helping the federal government target even U.S. citizens. And so I'm supporting different pieces of legislation. One of them, for example, would not allow DHS to use any money to arrest or detain or transport U.S. citizens. It would also track the folks, including U.S. citizens, that are taken into custody, because right now we're not getting hardly any information. People literally are being disappeared in the sense that they're not being told where they're going. They're not allowed to communicate with their family for days or sometimes weeks about where they've been sent. So when a government does that to somebody, they are disappearing that person. And of course, they sent some of them to that heinous prison in El Salvador, CICOT.
Yeah, one of the things that we're really, it's upsetting to us is that It's warrantless, it's faceless. The agents are dehumanized. It not only dehumanizes the person that's going and committing these acts, but it dehumanizes the victims of these assaults. What kind of legislation are you working on to identify some of these ICE agents and hold them accountable eventually when power does change hands?
Well, I'm also supporting legislation, have signed on to legislation to require that ICE agents identify themselves, that they not be allowed to wear masks, and that they identify themselves. There is a danger both to the agents and to people, because we've seen a lot of copycat folks now who literally are claiming to be ICE agents and going over to people and trying to abduct them or kidnap them, or get into their homes. So there's a real public safety concern here. But just generally, we've never supported a kind of secret police force in the United States. People behind masks that unwilling to say their name, unwilling to say what agency they're with, to present even a warrant, even if they've got one. And so, we need to be very, very strong in the Congress about pushing back on all this.
Do you think they're being told by their superiors, Congressman, to act this way? Do you feel that they've been emboldened by leadership in these federal agencies to just, act and take the gloves off, and that we got your back?
Yeah, I think it starts from the top. I think they've gotten a signal from Donald Trump and Stephen Miller and others that, these people want a bunch of folks gone, and they're going to let ICE agents do whatever it takes to accomplish that. And also the idea that there's not going to be any consequences for how they treat people. Yeah. Even if they violate people's constitutional rights, they're not going to be held accountable. And so I also support holding them accountable eventually. Right now that's tough because you got Donald Trump in there who's protecting them, but Donald Trump's not going to be president forever. And if any of those officers violated people's constitutional rights, certainly if they committed crimes, if they broke the law, I think they should be held accountable now, but that's not happening. The federal government should hold them accountable later. And I also think the states should also hold them accountable if they're breaking state law.
One of the things that's really concerning to us and that you brought up is just these private prison infrastructures. And it appears to be cruelty is the point, shuffling these inmates or detainees, these people around like luggage from one facility to the next. It appears that the only reason for this is that so somebody at the end of the line can line their pockets and make money off of these individuals. How many new facilities have opened up in Texas? Are you in conversations to, regulation or any sort of accountability for these private prisons that are currently making hand over fist money off of these people who are being taken off the streets?
You're right. I mean, that's a part that we don't think about as much, but this detention or imprisonment of asylum seekers, of migrants, it is a huge, huge business.
Yeah.
And these companies lobby, especially Republican politicians, to fill up those places because they make a lot of money when they're full. And so in Texas, I went and visited a few months ago a detention center. And as you can imagine, Nick, over the years now, I've been to a lot of different detention centers, the CBP processing centers, the centers that HHS has that holds minors, or at least used to now, or used to. Now they're just kind of putting people wherever. And so all of them, in one way or another, have been very problematic in how they treat people and the lack of respect for human rights.
You were around during former President Obama's years in office. You know this, our community, some of them referred to him as the border in chief. He did this in a way that was a lot more efficient. He did this in a way that seemed to target the violent criminals. I don't want to, put words in your mouth. It's so different now. How do you see how different it is now, given that, you had a Democratic president that deported a lot of people, but we're not seeing the same scenes? What is the difference now under President Trump 2.0?
Yeah, I mean, and I did speak critically about some of the policies back then. I remember. Even when President Obama was in office. But now, I mean, there is no comparison with what's going on now. You're having just a complete disrespect for human rights. You see these videos of an officer that shot a can of tear gas into a car with a 1-year-old who gets hit by this tear gas. Videos of a woman walking down the street being asked to present her citizenship papers. This is stuff that was not happening, was not policy back in 2014 or 2015 in those years. You also see gut-wrenching videos of kids that are watching their mom or their dad on the floor being manhandled violently by ICE agents. And the trauma that it's causing these folks is something that's never going to go away for them. And so there is a cruelty and a dehumanization that is part of public policy for the Trump administration that's unlike anything that we've seen, at least in modern American history. It kind of harkens back to the times where you had what was called Operation Wetback decades and decades ago, or another period where they were rounding up U.S. citizens and deporting them to Mexico. And a lot of folks don't realize that was part of this country's history. And you don't read much about it in school. You don't learn much about it. But it was an ugly chapter in American history. And part of the reason we don't see it also is because you didn't have people with cell phone cameras who were able to document it and then share it with the world. But ugly things like this did happen before, and we're seeing them happen again.
What happened to the compassionate conservative is what I think about. I remember when, George H.W. Bush was up there saying that everybody, no matter your status, whether you're here authorized or not, deserve the right to public services like education. I'd like to think that this is just as big of an issue outside of the Latino community. And I want to ask you, Congressman, what do your constituents, your non-Latino, non-Hispanic constituents say to you about what they are seeing on the streets of America?
I think there's been a lot of alarm. There's just, I think that people have a basic sense of decency to them. And even if they're conservative on the issue of immigration, for example, people want to make sure that criminals aren't getting into the country, that felons are removed from the country, but they don't want to see people treated like animals or dehumanized in the way that Donald Trump has made it part of his policy to treat people. And then when you layer on top of that, the fact that, because he was doing that in his first term, they were separating kids from their parents.
But people don't understand this. Yes, family separation still happens when an agent thinks that the adult that's with the minor is not actually their relative. So that they have the discretion to do that. But what President Trump was doing, he made it as a sanctioned policy of child abuse, that anyone that crossed was a felon right away and you're separated. And now we're seeing this sort of family separation 2.0, the dismantling of the family from within this country, going after the heads of households and letting the family deteriorate from that. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Well, yeah. And it was kind of family separation as punishment, as a punitive measure, as a way to inflict pain, to try to stop people, I guess, from coming or trying to come to the United States. So it was no longer a concern that, hey, maybe a child is being trafficked. It was, no, we're going to assume that everybody's being trafficked, or at least pretend that's the case, because we're trying to inflict pain on those people. And so, look, Americans, obviously have a deep sense of morality. They see that and they disagree with it. Like I said, I've had conversations now over the past 11 months, even with people that are conservative on the issue of immigration, and they're increasingly uncomfortable with what they're seeing.
They didn't vote for this. We're seeing this sort of movement emerge. This is not in my name, happening not in my name. I may have voted for conservative values, but I didn't vote to dehumanize my countrymen or my peers or people around me. 4 hours away from the border is where San Antonio sits. Your district is a ways from the border, but you're more familiar with it being from Texas. I'd be curious to hear your update of how you see the border now. Have these cruel policies led to a drop in the traffic on the border? Have they, quote unquote, worked? What are you seeing?
I think a few things. First, you have Mexico and other countries that have basically made it a lot harder for people even to make it into Mexico, for example, and then once they're in Mexico, have controlled their movement so that they don't make it up to the southern border, or what is for Mexico, the northern border with the United States. That's one part. The other part is, I think that a lot of the focus, at least the media focus, the traditional media focus, has moved from the border, especially because of the lower numbers, has moved from the border now to the cities. because of what ICE is doing. You didn't see a lot of that in the Obama years where you had, or the Biden years where you had ICE agents going into the middle of a city and walking down the street, questioning the people they see about their citizenship. A lot of the activity and enforcement of immigration laws was at the border, where it has historically been.
Yeah, it's the Greg Bovino show, and it makes you wonder, like, what happened to Tom Homan? It's like Greg Bovino has skyrocketed into this position of, he's getting a lot of attention, which we know President Trump doesn't like when others get more attention than he does. But it's become this show. First it was Los Angeles, then Chicago, now Charlotte, later is New Orleans. What do you make of Greg Bovino, the actions, the sort of videos that you've seen? He's been called and taken to task by federal judges. It appears as though none of that matters. It's like, let them enforce it. He travels with a propaganda crew, Congressman.
Yeah, I mean, he's an extremist. He is a right-wing extremist who clearly believes that nobody's ever going to hold him accountable.
Right.
They really are acting like they think Donald Trump is going to be not just the president until January of 2029, but a dictator well beyond that. That is how they're behaving, as though nobody is ever going to hold him accountable. And I think that for those that broke the law, that violated people's rights, they should be held accountable. And if they broke the law, they should ultimately be prosecuted.
We believe in this country. We believe in the democracy. This is a beacon. It's still the city, on a hill. It's going to change hands. Power is going to change hands. And it's going to take lawmakers like yourself to really hold those that did these atrocities, that broke the law, that dehumanized people. It's going to be up to you guys to hold these individuals accountable. And I do believe that that's going to happen. I do want to ask you while you're with me here, because I hear from conservative friends and I push back on this, and I'd love to hear what a lawmaker says. Some of my Trump voting friends, peers, they say this is necessary because President Biden opened the border, and this is the pendulum swing too far, and this is an overcorrection. This is not baiting you, but I'd love to hear your reaction to what people say when people say that.
I think it's just people trying to make themselves feel better about the cruelty and the chaos going on. Some of these people, for example, the people that they are ripping away from courthouses, immigration courthouses, these are people who are showing up in a legal way through an orderly process for an immigration hearing. In other words, they're not trying to hide from authorities. They're showing up before a judge so that their case can be considered. And still, ICE is going in there and ripping them away from their families oftentimes and deporting them. And so this idea that everything just got so chaotic or so violent or so out of control that this is just necessary, I just think that that's an excuse for the violence, for the dehumanization, and for the lack of respect for human rights that we're seeing right now.
We suffer from a disease of individualism in this country, Congressman, and it's almost like no one cares about a certain situation until it happens to them. I bring this up because one of your peers and colleagues in the House, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, has gone on a sort of mea culpa tour recently. She was on CNN apologizing for taking part in toxic politics. She became a target of the ire of Trump. What's your message to her and to others? Should we embrace somebody who is saying, hey, I did wrong and I'm here to apologize, or is it a little too late?
Well, I mean, I guess first I would say that I'm glad that she has changed her tune and hopefully had a change of heart. I'm glad that she's toned down her rhetoric because, I mean, the way that she was approaching public life and the way she was talking about different people and different groups was very toxic and very harmful. And I also think it spurred others to talk in the same way. And so I'm glad that she's pulling back from that. But yeah, I mean, look, she said, I didn't follow every single thing that she said over the years, but she has said some very problematic things. I can only hope that how she's behaving now and the change of heart that she's had now, that will inspire others who are also as mean-spirited, as toxic in their rhetoric, to also reflect and think about what they're doing in this country and how they're affecting public life.
On my best days, I try to lead with love and tolerance. And I say if I could be as good as I am from 7:40 to 7:50 when I drop off my kids before they go to school, I'm going to be the best, the best person ever. So thank you so much for encouraging us to lead with love and tolerance for somebody who's, just sort of stepping up and saying, hey, I did some wrong. I want to pivot now to another topic that is really taking over and dominating the conversation, the Epstein files. What is your stance on why they haven't fully been released yet? Do you believe that the president is, like many criticize him for, trying to distract and dissuade people from really caring about this? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I'm glad that the House is going to take a vote on him this week, and then it'll go over to the Senate, and hopefully the Senate will also vote to release everything. But by the way, Donald Trump, if he wanted to, has the power right now to release everything the Congress is trying to get released. I think that after the campaign where he said that the file should be released, I think he probably didn't realize how much in the files he is, how often he's mentioned, the kind of information that's coming out and will likely come out. And that obviously that gave him great concern and gave him great pause. But this is an issue that cuts across parties. This is not one of those hyper-partisan issues where each side is lined up and it's not going to budge. People across the political spectrum over the last years actually have come up to me and asked, when are you guys going to release those files? And for me, I'm in Texas. I represent part of Texas that of all the states in the nation sees the most sex trafficking of young people of any state in the nation. And so I want to make sure that, Jeffrey Epstein obviously is dead now, but I want to make sure that people are held accountable. And to be clear, if somebody's name is in those files and they've done wrong, whether they're Republican or Democrat, they ought to be held accountable. I don't see this as a partisan thing, and I think most people agree with that.
Protecting the vulnerable starts with children. In my eyes, they are the most vulnerable, and it's really disgusting for me to see people like Megyn Kelly and other supporters, ardent supporters of the president and of the GOP, sort of bend every which way to try to. I mean, you saw the clips, the language. A 15-year-old's not the same thing as a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old, and it's like, what are we talking about here? We're talking about minors. Yeah. We're talking about minors, and we're talking about survivors who are desperate for accountability, desperate for answers here, and we hope that House vote brings us some. We only have a few minutes left with you, Representative, and I'm so grateful for your time. We know how busy you are. Is there anything that you're working on right now, or anything that's going on in your world that you'd like to make us aware of, our viewers? What's going on in your life?
Well, yeah, we're continuing to work on legislation. I'm on the Intelligence Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committee, and everything a lot of our stuff just got pushed back because of the shutdown. And a lot of my work lately, number one, has been making sure people in my district are okay, because we got so many panicked folks who were either going to lose SNAP benefits during the shutdown, or San Antonio has a lot of federal employees and federal contractors. Folks that have been furloughed or laid off. And then, of course, now still dealing with the issue of folks who are no longer going to get those ACA subsidies, who've been concerned about losing those subsidies. And so a lot of our work lately obviously has been very intensive in making sure that we're serving our folks. But I'm concerned also on the intelligence side, the foreign affairs side, about what's going on with the military buildup around Venezuela. So we've been doing a lot of work around that. The American people didn't put Donald Trump in office because they asked for more wars. But that's exactly what it looks like he may be getting ready to do, is to launch a war in Venezuela. So quite honestly, trying to prevent that, and make sure that it doesn't happen. Make sure that, again, there isn't this full military strikes in Mexico, because he's also alluded to that. I think that would be damaging, not only for those countries, but also for the United States and around the world.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because it's something that we're starting to see emerge a lot more from the president, saying, hey, let's get prepared for strikes against the cartels. We've seen those strikes on speedboats. Representative, thank you so much for taking the time with us. We really, really appreciate it. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you think is important to know, or anything that you'd like to say? Now's your chance.
No, well, I just want to say, well, first, congratulations on this news show and everything that you're
Thank you so
doing.
much.
It's been very, I think, helpful for folks, and we've tried to repost different clips because I think it's been great. And I just hope people stay engaged right now. This is a very important period in American government, not just in the politics of who's running for office. I mean, in the governing right now. So there's been a lot of people over the last year who have been like despondent about what's going on, anxious about what's going on, even depressed. But I hope that they will take some time for themselves, but also that they won't back away from contributing and engaging in public life, because their voice does matter and it does make a difference. So please keep it up.
There's a moment to meet, and we are trying to meet the moment here. I'm a third generation Mexican American, and I still get treated like I just crossed the Rio Grande. And for me, it is a matter of, it's a higher purpose driven mission that we're on here, Representative. We really do believe firmly that our morals are in the right place, and we're standing up for the undocumented. So I really appreciate you seeing that and sharing our content. Again, thank you so much for taking the time with Nick Valencia News. Have a great day.
Great to be with you.
You got it. That was our pre-recorded interview that we taped earlier today with Texas Representative Joaquin Castro. Our special thanks to him. God bless you and good luck with what you're doing in your legislation. We pivot now to Georgia, where, if you remember, in 2024, there was a major chemical plant explosion that was not talked about enough. 30 minutes outside of Atlanta in Conyers, Georgia, the BioLab chemical plant exploded, sending a plume of smoke into the air that could be smelled 30 minutes away. In Fulton County, in the middle of Atlanta, I remember walking out of the bureau. I was still at CNN at the time, and all of us tasted the chlorine in the air. Then we started to hear the reports that were coming out of Rockdale County. People who were showering, who were breaking out with rashes all over their skin. An administrator, somebody who was in a position to talk about the land and the chemicals that could be seeping into the land because of the presence of a facility like that, died after giving testimony at the legislature. He was encouraging people to get blood tests because he was convinced that something was in that plume of smoke that was making people sick. And then he walked away in a very dramatic moment after giving a testimony at the state capitol. He died. This was a story that not really many people paid attention to, but one reporter, one intrepid reporter, somebody in full disclosure who I used to work with at CNN and went on to Georgia Public Broadcasting to be the host of Morning Edition, she picked up this story. She knew that there was more to it. And for the last year or several months, we'll get into it, she has been investigating this story in the only way that Pamela Kirkland can. Pamela, thank you so much for taking the time with CNN, or for look at you got me back in the day. Thank you so much for taking the time with Nick Valencia Live. Hey, it's so good to see you again.
Hey, good to see you too. This is great. Very much enjoyed the conversation with the congressman just a few minutes ago. But thank you so much for having me on and for paying attention to this story.
So let's start and just pick up here. I wanted to play a clip before we get started, just to give background to those who may not know, and maybe I missed some spots here, because you had a clip from one of your, is this your podcast, or it's a report that you sent the clip from?
Yep. So the podcast Manufacturing Danger, the BioLab Story, is our investigation over the last year. So it is everything, if you feel like binge listening to, from beginning to where we are right now. So that clip is probably one of the residents, Cheryl Garcia or Jean Sadler, who've both lived in Conyers for years, and their experiences with health concerns after the fire.
Let's take a look.
Hotel 911, how can I help you?
We got a freaking head bus at BioLab.
Which where?
Oh, Plant 12. I'm sorry, Plant 12. I'm out of breath. I'm sorry.
You could smell it. We stayed in the house, and you could taste it. It was just like a metallic taste in your mouth. My God. My husband, he went outside to do something just briefly, and came back in, and his eyes were burning, and his throat was burning, and he was coughing.
Pamela Kirkland, the reporter of that, joins us now. It's about a year later, more than. Do these residents have answers yet?
No, and I think that's the most frustrating thing for a lot of the people we've been talking to over the past year. They just want to know exactly what was in that chemical plume, what they've been exposed to, and what some of the long-term health concerns may be. Many of them have joined onto a class action lawsuit against BioLab and their parent company, KIK Consumer Products. So BioLab's a company that makes products to clean pools and spas. Their parent company, however, KIK Consumer Products, makes like Ajax and Clorox pool products and things that you're more familiar with. So one former employee joked with me that this is the biggest company that you've never heard of because you probably have some of their products in your home. But they just want answers as to what life may be like years from now. For Cheryl Garcia, who you just heard from, she went to an ENT. They scoped her vocal cords because her voice was raspy and her asthma symptoms had come back after the fire. So she wanted to know why. And when that ENT scoped her vocal cords, she said, I can't say that these are burns, but I can say that this is definitely damage to your vocal cords. So she ended up going through speech therapy. She's been on different medications and prescriptions to try to alleviate some of the symptoms that she's been dealing with. But a lot of residents talked about migraines. High blood pressure was another symptom that a lot of people seem to have, and really high, like 200 over 100, very abnormal and no explanation for it. Irritation of the eyes, throat, things like that. So at the end of the day, they want answers, and they also want accountability, which is where the lawsuit comes in. The original ask was for BioLab to shut down, to stop producing these chemicals in Conyers. What's happened since, in May, the company announced that they'd stop manufacturing, but they're going to continue to distribute out of the facility here. So for some people, it's bittersweet. It's an economic hit for the county. They're one of the largest employers there. And it's also, you know, the problem wasn't the manufacturing, it was the storage of the chemicals. So it's not like the chemicals are going anywhere. They're still going to be in that warehouse, and that worries a lot of people.
So let's get into the safety, Pamela, because one of the things that you told me in our pre-interview is that the regulatory body who is in charge of making sure that these types of chemicals are stored safely, appropriately, that they've gone away, and there's effectively no regulation over these types of incidents. That's the scary part, is that it's not a matter of if, but it seems like when is there going to be another one of these types of chemical plant explosions? Is it safe right now for the residents?
Well, I mean, when you look at this on a national scale, there's a chemical accident every other day in this country. And so the group of investigators who came to Conyers after the 2024 fire, it's the U.S. Chemical Safety Board. They're a non-regulatory governmental agency. They act as an independent watchdog over agencies like OSHA and the EPA. And so their job is to go in, investigate, find out what happened, and do their best to make recommendations so that an accident like that never happens again. Now, because they're non-regulatory, they don't have any teeth. They have no enforcement mechanism to say, you have to do this or you pay this fine. They can only suggest, hey, maybe don't store these two reactive chemicals next to each other next time. Maybe keep these in a spot where there's not a leaky roof, things like that.
Who's going to do that now?
I'm sorry?
Who's going to do that now?
Well, so if you look at the budget proposal for fiscal year 26 for the U.S. Chemical Safety Board, it says that those duties can be absorbed by OSHA and the EPA, which doesn't make much sense because you're talking about an agency that functioned as a watchdog over OSHA and the EPA.
So they're hoping that these agencies could regulate themselves.
Yes, that is the hope. And honestly, there's a lot of industry players here who really don't think this is a good idea. A lot of the chlorine lobby, for example, they value the CSB. One of my favorite documents in all of the FOIAs that we put in was an email from the EPA. The on-site coordinator in Conyers sent an email around, and all it said was, CSB's on the way, y'all. Like, they are well respected. They are a very small group. Their budget is $14.4 million, or at least that's what it was for this year. They've investigated hundreds of chemical accidents around the country, and their very small budget allows them to do a lot of this really important work. and it looks like it's getting zeroed out. It was something that the Trump administration looked at doing during the first term. And now that that fiscal year 2026 proposal has asked for a zeroing of that budget, it very much could happen in 2026 by September. The one question here, there is a piece of legislation in the Senate that could fund the CSB, but that's not really going anywhere, at least not at the moment.
What really shocked me about all this is just how little people cared. You know, like I tasted chlorine. We all did. I mean, I don't know if you were still at CNN at the time, but I remember walking out with a group of people and being like, it smells like pool around here. That's from this chemical plant that exploded. Why isn't this a bigger deal? You know, you had that, and I forget his name. You may be able to remind me. There was some sort of elected official in Rockdale County who died. You know, like this is, to me, it has all of the elements of an investigative piece, which is why you've won awards doing this. You've been digging into it like no one else has. Why is it, though, that it's only you? Where's all the attention around this?
You know, it's a good question. I think the nice thing about working in public media and in that space is that we really are a community service. And so my goal here was to get as much information as I could, because the deeper we dug, the more we uncovered. I really thought we were going to be looking at one chemical plant, one incident, and that was it, move on. But you see this pattern happening. And so I went to Roseland, Louisiana a couple months ago. There was a chemical plant there that exploded. They produced motor oil. There was black sludge in the grass, on the playgrounds, on cars. And once again, I found myself in like a local community church where hundreds of people were gathered asking for answers and trying to figure out what they had been exposed to, who was coming to help. For the most part in Roseland, those residents were told to clean up their own property. Also pretty surreal, former Lieutenant General Russell Honore was there. Nick, I'm sure you remember him from Hurricane Katrina and the military response to that in 2005. He was at the front of that church telling people exactly what Kenny Johnson did, the person you just mentioned, the Rockdale County Soil and Water Commissioner. Lieutenant General Honore was up there saying, go get your blood tested. Go see what you've been exposed to. Kenny Johnson was the water and soil commissioner, or one of them, in Rockdale County. He had been raising the alarm on BioLab for years. And I mean, that was his job, go in, do inspections. And BioLab is not the only chemical company in Rockdale County. So Johnson really was vocal about these companies, how they were operating in the county and holding them accountable. But as you mentioned in the intro, he went to testify, and the very beginning of his testimony, he says, let me catch my breath. He's out of breath. He finishes his speech and he just collapsed at the state capitol and died later that evening. And, you know,
was there believed to be any connection between what he may have been exposed to and his death?
You know, there's still no cause of death in that case. I've been asking the Georgia Department of Health for a year for that death certificate, and they keep telling me cause of death is pending, so we can't give you anything. I've called pretty much every coroner in the state of Georgia to see if I can get some more information, but nobody has anything. So I don't know if it was related or not, but I do know that almost anybody you talk to in Rockdale County, in Conyers, specifically about this story, his name still comes up because they felt like he was really championing that cause for them and making sure that they were safe and trying to make sure that these companies were held accountable.
I was covering all the drama at the Georgia State Election Board, and Kenny Johnson came up to me and my then producer, Jason Morris, to tell us about the environmental concerns that he was experiencing or that he was seeing in Rockdale County. And a few months later, the BioLab explosion happened. And then, you know, several weeks after that, he was dead. I mean, that to me was so sobering and shocking. And the fact that we really didn't put the effort to to go after what was happening there, it made me so proud to know you, Pamela, because I know how dogged of a reporter you are. I know that you're in the, courtrooms pulling files and filing Freedom of Information Act requests. Like, I just know that there's no better journalist to be searching for answers right now. And as you talk, I am seeing images of East Palestine. I'm seeing images of Flint, Michigan, and the water crisis there. does that same thing happen to you? Are you thinking about, is it because this community is a lower class or impoverished that they're just getting sort of, the crap is rolling downhill to these communities here? No one seems to care.
Yeah, I mean, the similarities when you look at where these incidents take place, you can definitely connect some dots that they're lower income, usually communities of color. East Palestine, Ohio is interesting, though, because residents from East Palestine actually created this group called the Chemically Impacted Communities. And so their goal was to kind of unite everybody who's been through this to say, if you have questions, if you need help, if you're looking for doctors, we can help each other, because they just felt like the federal and state response wasn't enough. So a couple women, Jamie and Tamara Wallace, came down to Georgia in December to speak at the state capitol about BioLab and to try to get BioLab's business license taken away. That did not happen, but they've been in touch, and now you see residents from Conyers reaching out to residents in Roseland, Louisiana to say, hey, we're here to help. Here's what we did. One woman told me she was talking to a dad in Roseland about where to live. He was, I think, a couple miles from where the explosion happened. She was like, if you have anywhere to go, go. She actually moved from Covington, which is right next to Conyers, down to Panama City, Florida, because she felt like the health issues she was having were so bad, her doctors recommended she just leave the area. She told the same thing to that dad. If you can get out of Roseland, get out. She's charged it all on credit cards. She doesn't really know how she's paying it back, but she was willing to do whatever she had to do for her health and safety.
Wow. And you're doing all of this reporting, Pamela, we should highlight, with intense budget cuts to public broadcasting. You're doing this all, likely, if I know you, on your own time while juggling being a mom and a wife and an all-around badass woman. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you think is important to know? How do people follow you? This is your chance to, I end every interview by asking what I haven't asked that you think is important to know. Now's your time. Here's your platform.
Well, you can follow me on Instagram. It's so embarrassing. I need to change it. It's actually my old AIM screen name, and I thought it was funny. I created the account, but I'm at Meleda, MELEDA 3956, and you can find me on TikTok, Pamela Kirkland 111, which is much easier.
Pamela's doing some great work over there on TikTok. She had a great video the other day that took off. You did some numbers on that. I love that.
Yeah.
I miss you so much. It's so nice to see you, Pamela. You're the best. God bless you. When I think of CNN, I think of people like you and being in the huddle with people like you. So it's so cool to see you shining.
And you're still doing the work, which is awesome. I am here for any investigation you want to do. You want to.
Well, we're going to story swap. I'll see you on GPB next time.
Exactly.
All right, Pamela Kirkland, thank you so much for taking the time with Nick
you.
Valencia Live. God bless you. That was Pamela, my former coworker. I really mean that. She was my producer when I covered Tyree Nichols. And so we were in those courtrooms, pulling those documents, pounding the pavement in Memphis, connecting with activists, going into city council meetings. I mean, that is one badass person, but especially one badass journalist. We stay in Georgia now, and we pivot to the homeless crisis here across the country, but one that has really seen some growth here in Georgia. Coming from California, especially Eagle Rock, if you've ever been to Northeast LA, there is a lot of people that are unhoused in that area. And my executive producer, who also lives in the area, he pointed out to me it's sort of like a highway. The Los Angeles River cuts right through Northeast LA, and that seems to be sort of a pipeline for the transient community. They end up stopping in Eagle Rock. And so I grew up a lot just in and around, not just in my hometown, but all throughout Los Angeles. It had a huge, sizable homeless population. Come out here to Atlanta, it's not that stark, but now you're seeing a rise in the unhoused. We're seeing an impact to the economy. We're seeing substance abuse issues on the rise because people, when times are good, what do they turn to? When times are bad, what do they turn to? And for a lot of people, times are really tough right now. But there is one person who is active in the community and has been for decades, somebody who I met recently at an event where we raised money for homelessness. Darlene Schultz is the CEO and president of Georgia Works, and she now joins the show here at Nick Valencia Live. Darlene, thank you so much for taking the time. How are you?
I'm good, Nick. How about you today?
Oh, I'm having a great day today. Tuesdays and Thursdays are awesome because I get to talk to the people. I get to talk to people like you and hear interesting stories. So tell us about your mission. Tell us about your project and what you're doing to help the homeless community in Georgia.
It's my pleasure. This is my favorite topic, Nick. But Georgia Works is first and foremost a workforce development program for men. So we help men who are experiencing homelessness or coming out of incarceration get back on their feet. The difference between what Georgia Works does and the lots of other nonprofits that are working in the homeless sector is that we require our men to come into the program clean, sober, and drug-free. Okay. And if they are experiencing, any mental health issues and it's not too severe and they're on their medications, we welcome those men as well. But we decided to do that early on when we were founded in 2013 because those issues of alcoholism or drugs or substance abuse is likely what got them into homelessness in the first place. And so we want to address those issues and those barriers along with providing them temporary housing and helping them get back on their feet while they're in our 6 to 8 month program.
One of the reasons I wanted to highlight what you do is because I'm sober. A lot of the people that follow me know that I hadn't had a drink in 4 years and 10 months. I'm sure I could look at my sober today tracker. It was so evident to me that I was drinking at people, places, and things, and that my alcoholism and addiction was but a symptom of a bigger disease. There are a lot of people hurting out there, Darlene. What are the kinds of stories that you hear coming in from people who are coming in off the streets and trying to get their lives back on track again?
They just need a second chance, sometimes a third chance, sometimes a fourth chance. My star story is our intake coordinator, Adolphus Chandler. He was the third graduate of the Georgia Works program back in 2013. And when he graduated and he received that first paycheck at the age of 55 years old, that was his first legitimate paycheck. He had been arrested and in and out of jail 95 times since he was 13 years old. And you say, Adolphus, what made this stick? And he said, I was ready. It was my time. I decided to give up all those bad habits. And with the hard and fast, rule regimented Georgia Works policies, we were able to help him do that. So, count the years now. That's been 12 years for him that he's been gainfully employed and, gets a little bit of Social Security income. But we want to develop men to be self-sufficient, tax-paying members of society once more. I had a cohort of MBA Georgia Tech students do a cost savings analysis for me 2 years ago, Nick, and they determined that for every man that we have graduated from the Georgia Works program, we have saved taxpayers like you and I over $40,000 per man because they're not moving slowly through the judicial system. They're not taking up a bed at Grady Hospital. They're not in the back of an ambulance. It costs less to run our program than it does to have them sit on the streets, with no roof over their head.
And this is why we should care. This is why people should care about the work that you're doing, because I see it, and I'm sure you see it because you're so involved in the community. People don't even look in the eyes of somebody who's unhoused. It's almost as though they get the blame. They're there because they want to be there. There's such a stigma, especially among people who see the world in black and white. Like, look, this is America. Anyone can make it. What do you say? This isn't baiting you, Darlene, because I really want to know. You lead with compassion. You lead with love and tolerance. What do you say to those people who say, you're wasting your time, or like, why are you investing in a group that wants to be there themselves?
Well, there is a small contingent of people who you can try to help, and that they will not accept the help.
It's maddening, yeah. Like you said, people decide where their rock bottom is.
Yeah, but the majority of the people do want help, and there's two ways that it's being offered up right now in Atlanta. So if you're involved in the homeless sector, you are likely getting your funding from HUD up in Washington, okay? That funnels their money down to the Department of Community Affairs here in the state of Georgia. And then it's a competitive process. You apply for it and you are getting those funds for operating or vouchers, for your units. But HUD is telling you to practice the housing first approach, okay? Housing first means I'm going to walk up to you, Nick, because you're sitting on the corner by my parking lot and say, Nick, I want to help you. I'm going to put you up in this hotel over here until I can find you more permanent housing. what do you think about that? And you're saying, sure, I'm tired of living on the streets and being cold. And I say, why are you here? And it's because I'm addicted to meth. Okay. And the outreach worker is going to say, well, you're going to get into this housing and then we're going to take care of those, your issues later with wraparound services. But housing comes first. Okay. And we're going to help you then at a later point in time. And the Housing First works. It's a fabulous approach to ending homelessness, but so is a workforce development program like Georgia Works. Okay, so what I am trying to plead with, Mayor Dickens, Governor Kemp, the HUD secretary, the new HUD secretary, is that you cannot throw that word homelessness in a bucket and expect there's to be one answer to solve that problem, because there are multiple answers. And we've graduated over 1,100 men from our program since 2013.
Phenomenal.
So we've helped, and we need to be and a workforce development program such as Georgia Works needs to be recognized as an additional answer to solve the homeless issues.
One of the things, and I know you're someone of faith, and one of the things that I heard in the program is if God is all it took to keep us sober, we'd all be sober. It takes action. It really does take action. And I know you're surrounding yourself with people who really want to get help. And the last question I have with you here, what are we missing with this? Why should more people care about what you're doing and what you're doing?
Because, as I said to you, we're saving you and me, Nick, $40,000 for every man that's graduated times 1,000. That's millions of dollars. So care about it, because this works, okay? And we're saving you money by Mayor Dickens or any donor that wants to go onto the donate page on my website. This works. And the last thing I'll say to you, Nick, is I think I said this to you at our event the other night, but we focused on men because in 2013, the point in time count that year in the city of Atlanta showed that 70% of the unsheltered people were men.
Wow.
And so we focused on that. But when I took over as CEO 6 years ago, they wanted me to do one thing, which was find our own facility, which we've done. We're going to move in about another month. But my mandate to the board was to start a Georgia Works for Women program. And so I'm going to successfully open the doors of a small facility in DeKalb County next month. That'll start off with 11 beds, but it's a first for Georgia Works and for a women's program that will focus on workforce development.
Big dreams start in small rooms.
I love it.
Big dreams
Yeah.
start in small rooms.
And this my goal in life is to stand up our new building on Auburn Avenue, open this Georgia Works for Women's program, and then take this to the mayor of Austin or Dallas and say, you can replicate this, okay? It is easy to do, okay? We will have one in all the major cities.
Darlene, we didn't even get to talk about your cheerleader past and being with the Houston Oilers and now Tennessee Titans and being a director of the cheerleading squad over there. You're so interesting. I loved having this conversation with you.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed talking to you when we were together last, and I want you to come out to our ribbon cutting and see firsthand what we're doing. That would be meaningful to me.
We'll be there. Real quick, how can people follow your work? We just have a couple seconds left.
GeorgiaWorks.net. We will post update every other week or so.
Darlene Schultz, President and CEO of Georgia Works. You're doing God's work. God bless you. Thank you so much for taking the time with Nick Valencia Live. Mwah, right back at you. God, I love Atlanta, man. We're so many diverse people here, and just people who really care and are leading with love and tolerance and compassion. And we've gotten that message today from Representative Joaquin Castro to the intrepid reporting that Georgia Public Broadcasting's Pamela Kirkland is doing in Conyers, the biochemical plant explosion, and also here with the President and CEO, Darlene Schultz, who is really trying to make a difference for all of you out there. And thank you guys, all of you who decided to show up across all platforms. We stream across Substack, Instagram, and YouTube. We are really grateful for you guys paying attention to us, really caring and seeing the work that we're doing. And we're going to continue on with our original reporting and going back out into the streets. I'm driving on Thursday. I'll be heading up to Charlotte, North Carolina, where the Greg Bovino show landed a couple of days ago. And we're already seeing those dramatic videos of suspected federal agents on the streets of Charlotte taking people into custody in brutal ways. We saw a high-speed chase in the middle of a busy intersection. Literally people following federal agents and trying to chase them away from taking their neighbors, their friends, their peers, their loved ones. We've heard reports in South Charlotte of suspected federal agents going block by block by block to Latino-owned businesses or businesses that are catered towards the Latino community. We need more love and tolerance. We need to realize that this group that is being persecuted right now on the streets of America are here to add value to this country. They're here because they contribute to this country. They pay taxes. They send kids to college. They move in good faith. There's no one covering the immigration situation in this country quite like we are. And we are so, so thankful that you guys care to pay attention, from Representative Castro's office to telling us that they share reporting to, my fellow former colleague, Pamela, saying, keep going, to the people that are reaching out to us with stories to tell. We really are so thankful for you. And we hope that we can tell some more great stories in Charlotte. I'll be heading there from Thursday until Monday. If you're in the area or you see something out there, please send it to us. We're in it for the long haul, guys. And we, as always, want to thank you guys for helping us make truth go viral. You know what I say at the end of every show. Have a great day on purpose.